It's League Unlock. My name's Eric. Thank you guys for joining us as we roll on with the power rankings ahead of the 2019 LEC split. I pretty much say that every time now, by the way, instead of LCS, so a little pat on my own back for that one. We're on to number 7, and this is just outside of the playoffs. And so far, I know no games have been played, but on paper, it looks like there's a clear bottom 3 in EU and then a top 7 where you could make a case for any 7 of these teams to make playoffs. Obviously, only one of them is going to miss out, but I think we're guaranteed at least one super solid team will be missing out on playoffs in the spring split. And for us, it's this team here at number 7. It's going to be Splyce. And on paper, this roster actually looks pretty darn good, and they haven't missed playoffs in years. But the 6 teams ahead of them, you can make a case for them to make it over them. I think Splyce will be so close to making playoffs, and really, I think 5, 6, 7, those 3 teams in particular, you could kind of argue either way that some of them will be making playoffs. But this roster, Kabe and Xerxes, the only returning guys from last year. Norskaren, you could argue, is actually an upgrade from Kasing. They're pretty much interchangeable, I would say, similar to Vizicachi and Otawamne. And Humanoid is probably actually a downgrade, from Niski, even though he has been tearing up the TCL and the minor regions in EU. I think Niski still had a fantastic split, so that's going to be a small downgrade, which puts them, considering a lot of the other teams in EU got better or at least stayed similar power level, they're falling just short of playoffs this time. But, I mean, this roster that they put together is pretty fantastic, considering initially the organization didn't even think they were going to be part of the LEC because, well, Riot told them that they wouldn't be, and then kind of last minute, they basically told them, oh, actually, something fell through, so you guys are back. I hope you still have your entire roster together. Haha. Well, they actually kept 2 of the key important pieces for them, and they're still going to be a very solid team, I think, here in 2019. And if you look at some of the weaknesses they had last year, it was their early game was pretty bad. They were getting blown out of some of these games. They were dragging games out to 50 minutes, struggling to close out a lot of these matches. And a lot of that, I mean, obviously, it's because of their early game that falls to the jungler, you might say, to kind of roll through that early game for his squad. But I'm actually excited to see Vizicachi and Xerxes play together. You know that Odo and him, they were the Romanian Bash brothers there in that top half of the map. Humanoid is going to be exciting to see how well he can perform. Really, there's 3 huge rookies to look out for in the mid lane, and we know the history and the precedent that's been set for rookie EU mids. They dominate and eventually come to NA and get a whole lot of money because that's just how it goes. But now franchising is in EU, so they don't need to leave. They're actually going back. Just look at Febivin. So there's a high caliber and high expectations that people have for these rookie mid laners in Europe because they almost always deliver and perform at a high level. So the likes of Humanoid, Nemesis, and Abadaga, we're expecting big things out of them, and I'm excited to see how they all perform. But Humanoid on Splyce is who we're talking about right now. And Niski has some decent-sized shoes to fill for him, so we'll see if he can compete against some of the very best. Lucky for him, there's one less great mid laner in Perks that he won't have to lane against, but still plenty of competition to test his might against. The key guy, though, we were talking about early game struggles, it's going to be Xerxes in the jungle because, to be honest, he's actually been quite inconsistent during his year on Splyce. At times, he looks like an all-pro jungler, and he got some of those honors, deservedly so, throughout 2018. But at other times, he just farms too much, and you feel like he's almost irrelevant in that early game. That first blood percentage, 50 is great to talk about him because it's basically a coin flip. When he's getting those first bloods, he's completely in control of the early game. Everything runs through him for Splyce. They can get some decent sized advantages, and it really just bridges the gap to that mid to late game where Kabe can take over the game and just pop off. But when they don't have that almost buffer window where they can just kind of control the game and play it slow, when they're playing on the back foot or playing from behind, they basically had no chance there throughout 2018. So they need an aggressive Xerxes who's playing, I think when he's playing the off-meta kind of stuff, it's it throws opponents for a loop, and it's really when they're at their best. He started that Hecarim jungle way back when on the Unicorns. I think there's going to be a lot of viable junglers that we're going to see here. Even he was playing Zac when not many other people were, and his ganks, obviously you can have a much more unique gank path when you're playing someone who can slingshot across 3 different screens. So yeah, you can take some unique pathing there. That's exactly what he did, and he was so dominant in that early game. But we need to see the consistency for him here, because it is going to be a tight race, like I said, in the playoff hunt for Europe. So if Splyce, even in summer, they started 0-4, I know they had a tough schedule to start, but if they're going to be dropping games like that and going on some serious slumps, that's probably enough for them to miss out on playoffs in the spring split, because just like spring in 2018, the standings were incredibly close, and it was one game that was separating multiple seeds. I expect that to happen again here in spring. So if Splyce don't come out of the gates running, they can't, both spring and summer, they struggled to get out of the gates. So they can't do that. They can't do that when there's so many new teams that are thirsty and hungry to get to that playoff run. And especially, you know, someone like Origin or Schalke, who've already, Origin wants to, you know, get back in the races and forget about how their LCS tenure ended last time. So there's a lot of hungry teams, and Splyce is going to have their hands full keeping up with them. So they're coming in at number 7, just outside of playoffs, but they could still make it. That's all the time today for League Unlocked. My name's Eric. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.